Hello team, Brian here. Today is Tuesday, December 19th, 2023, and we are going to cover an introduction to PowerConnect for Elastic integration. It's a relatively new development, and today's session will cover an overview of Elastic, what the architectural options are going to be, and then we'll focus on a specific type of integration, most important to our new customers going into 2024. And that will include a specific Elastic technology called Stream. We'll review what configuration changes and instantiations are required on the Elastic side, how PowerConnect is configured, and what the requirements are. There are some nuances to which PowerConnect version supports this integration. Then we'll review the connection schema for this new uploader class, sending PowerConnect data directly to Elastic. So excited to dive in here today. So first of all, what is Elastic? Elastic is short for Elasticsearch. And Elasticsearch is the distributed search and analytics engine at the heart of the Elastic stack. Logstash and Beats facilitate collecting, aggregating, and enriching data and storing it in Elasticsearch. Today, we're actually not going to be using Logstash or Beats, but instead PowerConnect to extract the data from an SAP ECC system or S4HANA, sent directly into Elastic. Third technology called Kibana is that front-end visualization that allows you to interactively explore, visualize, and share insights. And all of that work will be covered on subsequent sessions. Today we are focusing on indexing, getting the data from SAP and into Elastic. So next I want to review those architectural options there. I did preempt by saying we're not using Logstash, but jumping over to a quick logical diagram here. For any PowerConnect version less than version 8, the way to get SAP data into Elastic is through Logstash. Logstash is a standalone server or serverless technology that receives and routes data and can send data really anywhere. So on another session, I'll show you how to stand up Logstash in like an AWS EC2 instance, and then how to route it into Elastic Cloud. The other benefit for Logstash is it's very similar to Cribble without the beautiful front end. It's all command line technology, but you can take a single source like PowerConnect and split it into, say, an on-prem Elastic stack, Elastic Cloud, or even any other data sync. So send it over to Logarithm. We'll cover that in another session, but again, that is the option to get PowerConnect data into Elastic if you are version less than 8. The recommended path, however, for is that they upgrade to version 8. This is the most, or the latest, I should say, and most elegant solution because it doesn't require anything in the middle here. There's no middleware. So for a customer who's upgraded to version 8 or above, there's a native uploader class within PowerConnect that uses the Elastic data stream and sends that SAP data directly into Elastic Cloud. This integration requires a specific BC set to be activated on the PowerConnect side, and it requires indexer configuration on the Elastic side. It's a little bit more in depth than plug and play. Okay, so the next thing I'd like to cover today is to review the Elastic configuration. So for that, I'm going to jump over into our Elastic Cloud and review what data streams are. So this is a bit of a different concept. It's specific to Elastic. It's similar to the HTTP event collector source on the Splunk side. Essentially, a data stream lets you store append-only time series data across multiple indices while giving you a single named resource for requests. It's well suited for logs, events, metrics, and other melt-type data, or data that's continuously generated, data that doesn't need to be updated, time series. This is exactly what PowerConnect data is. It also gives you the ability to store in multiple indices with a single named resource, so that's pretty neat. That's something that's a differentiator from Splunk. That's why we're using data streams in this example. There are other ways to store objects within Elasticsearch. Elastic is used to search for all sorts of documents and different use cases that would not be time series data. And for those use cases, there are other methods of indexing data, uploading data, and managing it, especially for objects that require frequent updates. You can think of it like a, one of the biggest customers of Elastic is Uber. Uber uses Elastic to search for drivers, right? So as a customer places an Uber request, Elastic is the back-end search engine that searches for those drivers. Driver availability has to be updated frequently. That uses a different technology within Elastic than what we're using here today. Let's go over to our home page here. And today we want to go into index mappings. So this is probably the most important thing that you have to know about configuring the integration between PowerConnect and Elastic. You see with the Splunk integration, we just send data, and data coming out of PowerConnect is already formed. It has the metadata, and it is sent to an index which is already specified. Typically, it's an SAP index. With the data streams in Elastic, you can dynamically choose which index to place that data. So what do I mean by that? Let's go into stack management here, and we'll look at index management. I'm going to sort this list in, let's go to index templates here. You can actually see one right here, log sap obop.connect. We'll talk about that here a bit, but index templates, a single index template that you can see here, zlogs sap obop star. Okay, this allows you to make every event type a variable, which means each event type coming out of PowerConnect gets to be stored in its own index, which makes it incredibly performant at time of search. So this is one of the key differences in a configuration setup from your typical Splunk environment. In the Splunk uploader class configuration, you would simply declare the index that all of the data should go into. In the Elastic configuration, you will declare which field, like event type, instantiates the index upon that first event's arrival, after which every subsequent event type matching that case appends that time series data, all within their own indexes or indices. Pretty sweet because it makes it faster. So let's talk about what this setup looks like. This is my tester here, zlogs.sap.obop. Ultimately, this can be whatever the customer wants. But as we get started here, it's probably best to just follow this nomenclature and then determine why changes should be made here. So let's go into the index template here. And I'm going to actually go through manage rather than go through the settings, because the settings overview, they don't really show you all of the changes here, and it's a little deep. So I'm going to edit this index template. The template is on obviously it's on our Elastic Stack, so you can always come in here and reference it during the first one. So when you create an index template, it's going to require a name, and this has to be unique from the other indexes within the customer's environment. The name can be whatever you want it to be. The pattern is key to instantiate what those indices will become. As we've talked about before, the variable there at the end of obop correlates directly to the variable that is declared within the PowerConnect configuration. So in this demonstration, we'll see that that variable is set to event type, which means that the pattern here, as each event comes in from PowerConnect, an event type, if it already exists, if that index already exists, for example, zlogs sap.obop.sm20, that event type will append the existing index. If the next event is stad, for example, and that index does not exist, this pattern defines that next process for Elastic to create an index for all stad events. That new index is created, after which all subsequent stad events are stored within that index. Declare that pattern here, and that will determine the name of all of those indices following on. So if you were to say, zlogs.star, well, you would lose some of your filtering capabilities, but it would then be zlogs.eventType and whatever event types come in. Create that data stream. So check this box here. Let me get my annotation. You want to make sure that is checked. Set your priority. If you have multiple templates following the same pattern, the priority will determine which one gets chosen overall. And so this is a way to test it. Highly recommend you set the priority as 100 there to try to prevent any complications if a customer tries to create one here. Version control, highly recommend updating the version on this so that you can see in this rapid development space what's being updated, and some way controlling if the customer has updated this version, this template, because you can change this live within the system versus the golden template that we've provided that customer. Finally, it's highly recommended that you add a metadata field here and the description here. This is a test system, so we have PowerConnect OBOP test stream. You can describe it for whatever you want. PowerConnect OBOP data or PowerConnect OBOP stream. It's plausible that in the future the metadata could be split based on needs. For example, which system. We do grab the source and the host name, so don't know if that's necessary, but it's there. So going to this next page here, this talks about component templates, and these are templates that allow you to use what Elastic engineers have already defined for what logs could look like, what data streams should look like, and what the settings are for logs. And so configuring all three of these are necessary in this initial phase, and you will search for them here and then just add them over. Make sure you get those three in. We'll hit next. Index settings. So there's a whole host of ways to modify the behavior of each index. At this point, we don't have any settings. We'll go to next. This one might fool you a little bit because there's nothing here within the mapped fields, right? However, there are 4 menu options, runtime fields, which also leave that alone, nothing needed. Dynamic templates, nothing needed. However, in the advanced options here, this is where you want to make sure that dynamic mapping is enabled. Ensure that the map date strings as dates, and this is where you can modify date formats. So strict date time, date optional time. This is where your formatting needs to map to the PowerConnect timestamps. So follow these patterns here and you'll be just fine. The default does not include those patterns, so make sure to blow away the defaults and include that your month day, hour, minute, second patterns there. And then Elastic will be able to grab those and make them searchable. Scrolling down, this should be enabled by default. Just make sure that it is selected so that source field is included on data extraction. All right, let's hit next. No routing value for CRUD operations required. Aliases to be determined. We'll figure that out later. Right now, there's no changes needed. Grab a screenshot of this, make sure that all of these fields have these elements. Make sure you have your mappings, your metadata, and then you can also select on the preview here, copy this JSON file for all of the configuration settings, save it in your text editor, keep it on standby. It will make it a lot easier to compare if the customer made changes to the index template and you're not sure like where the changes are. Best just to have a copy of that. Boom, save template. At any time, you don't have to open up the manage button in order to get all of those details. For instance, like the preview, you can just click on the index template name, go over to preview, and get that whole file. From there, you can just throw it in a text editor, run a diff on it, see if there's any changes that the customer made. Changing the index template will be a breaking change to the integration. It's important to get that down solid. Okay, so what we've done so far is we've configured the Elastic Cloud Stack configuration so that it knows what to do when it receives this SAP data from PowerConnect. So now Elastic is prepared to receive data. As those event types come in, Elastic will evaluate what those event types are. If it already has an index for that event type, it will append the data there and continue that time series storage. If that event type is not if that event type does not have its own index yet, Elastic will automatically create one. So this is really neat because as PowerConnect evolves and as the customer updates PowerConnect to include new event types, Elastic will automatically create all of those additional indexes each time a new event type is found and evaluated. Super, super cool stuff. Okay, we're going to stay in Elastic here for a little bit because the other trick here is getting the API key. Just like with the other integrations, an API token or API key is required to authenticate the post from PowerConnect. And so this next topic we're going to discuss is how do you get the Elastic API key, how to create one, and how to your cloud ID and host endpoint encoding. So let's go back here and let's see. Under the management menu from the all options, select on integrations. Whole bunch of integrations, but really what we want to do here is view deployment details. And there's two things, both are critical for this. One is going to be your cloud ID. Okay, we're going to go ahead and copy that, and we'll use that here in a second. The second one is API keys, create and manage. So we'll click on this. This is where you would create an API key. You can instantiate it as any name. However, you only have one chance to view the key. It's like every other API token generator on the web. After you create one, let's do SAP test token here. Obviously you can restrict, expire after a certain time. Pay attention, like if a customer has an expiration date requirement for these API tokens, then key management has to be a part of their procedures. It's like that, they have to own that, right? This is 100% customer owned stuff at this point. If they want to make API key management, we shouldn't have to go in and update those keys each time they expire. So what I did there is I just created a key. Here's my user number because I'm logged in as a super user right now. And there's the name, SAP test token. You'll notice here that an API key has been created. You can copy it. This is the only time you get to copy this key. Once you navigate away from this page, it's gone forever. Another key to understand here is base 64. You'll see a tab up in my browser here, base 64 decode. This is the only time you're going to have to get into base 64 decoding, and so we'll move on to that topic. So at this point, after you have your key, the customer should provision it for you, but if not, you can refer back to this video and this is how you would create it. Copy it now because you won't see it again. So I already have my key set up. I don't need to copy it. What I've done is I've copied the cloud ID to my clipboard. I'm going to go over to this online tool called Base64 Decode. I'm going to paste that in here. So I'm going to take a minute to talk about Base64 decoding and the cloud ID for the Elastic Stack now. What Elastic has done is they have created these unique identifiers for all of the cloud stacks for all of their customers and all of those customer environments. And so what we have here is we have SAP_demo : boom, a Base64 encoded, essentially host name is what this is, okay? So what I'll do here is I'll delete SAP demo, which is the name of the Kibana instance that I log in through. And we'll want to make sure that we're on UTF-8. We'll decode it. What do you know? We have uscentral1.gcp.cloud.es.io, and we have a couple of variables in there delimited by these $signs. Very, very important that you see this US Central. It could be West, could be East, wherever the GCP cloud region is used to host the customer stack. That's the output you're looking for when you decode the cloud ID. The reason this is important is because the post method going from PowerConnect to Elastic currently does not support a cloud ID as the endpoint name. So if you think about your Splunk implementation, you would declare that host field, where's that endpoint? It could be behind a load balancer or whatever, directly to the index or heavy forwarder, what have you, but it's a host ID. Yada, 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 .com or blah, 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 port 8088, right? The cloud ID is not decoded within the PowerConnect uploader class today, so you have to do it yourself and declare that endpoint or that host ID manually. You'll also notice that there are these two variables here. You have one there, the second one here. The second one is not used for the connection. You don't have to worry about that. The first one is required. This is your customer ID. You cut that, remove that, and append or prepend, that's your actual host name. This is really, really important to know and really important to remember here, because if I go back to the Elastic Cloud Stack here, what you'll see is, look at my host name here. So I have a custom alias that says RHONDOS.kb. Using a custom alias will not work. All right, that's the kind of the biggest misconception here, is that if a customer has created that custom alias for their name or something fun, like we have RHONDOS, that actually will not work. You have to decode the cloud ID to get your actual customer value here to prepend the endpoint. Take a minute, bookmark this site. I like it, base64decode.org. It has served me well. Take a minute to bookmark where we're at in the video and come back to this. That's going to be the biggest hiccup in setting everything up here. So at this point, we're completed with all of the configuration in Elastic and creating the API key, understanding the cloud ID or that endpoint. So now we have enough data to move over to PowerConnect. So in this next section here, I'm going to open up my team viewer into the jump box into SAP GUI. The installation, and again, to back up a little bit, the process that I'm going to show you here requires PowerConnect version 8 and above. So if the customer does not have PowerConnect version 8, it's not going to work. They have to update to version 8, latest release, otherwise it just simply is not going to work. The installation is basically the same. You're going to import and install PowerConnect just like you normally would. There is a special transport that is required specifically for the Elastic Uploader class. And you can refer back to the team for what the transport number is. You want to import the transport right after the add-on installation, but before the BC set activation, right? So in your sequencing of installation procedures, In fact, let's go to PowerConnect, go off script here. Let's see if I can remember where this installation is. Okay, so I've navigated to PowerConnect.io to the installation guide. So the steps here: import the agent using the Saint process and then activate the BC sets. Before you get to step 2, right, before you activate any of the BC sets, this is where you want to import the specific transport for the Elastic uploader. Okay, boom. So you can treat it, it's not really a hotfix, but it is a special transport. Something to keep in mind there. All right, back to the show. So we've imported the transport. Let's go into strust SSO2, and you're going to follow your typical guidelines for importing the certificate here. What I'll highlight here is the current server under standard and scroll down to that Elastic certificate that I've already imported here. So there it is. You can see that I've already imported this certificate, anything at uscentral1.gcp.elasticcloud.com. If you need to get that certificate, it's pretty straightforward. Go back to your stack, hit on your lock, certificate is valid. You can grab it directly from here. Show your certificate and then download it directly, bring it onto your machine, and then import it into strust. Let's go back to the next BC set activation. Without this specific BC set activation, the new PowerConnect version 8 won't actually show you the option to create an Elastic endpoint. So what we have to do is go into SA38, I think. Get out of here. And then we have to type in here a specific Brave New World VS goodness gracious, BC set base. All right, there it is. So, after we get into the PowerConnect switches, this is the switch that you need to toggle, EP Elastic. I'm not actually going to toggle it right now, and the reason for that is because I already have it turned on. All right, but essentially you would hit toggle. You can see all of our different switches here. You just want to turn that one on. So I'm going to back out of this because I don't want to do it. Cancel out of that. Cancel out of that. Right on. All right. That was clunky, but hopefully you get the gist. USAP gurus will probably get that so far. All right. Let's go into the PowerConnect admin console here, and we'll take a look at the configuration. All right, so we have PowerConnect version 8 for SAP Solutions. I'm going to head up to Administrator, go to the connection setup for upload scheme. I'm not going to turn this thing off. I'm going to let it run. All right. What we've done here is by activating that BC set and by toggling the new Elastic uploader, you will see a new button on this screen. So if a customer already has version 8, this part, Elastic Stream, is the new functionality that has just been activated. So you want to click on this and fill everything out. So this is where you will see a little bit of familiarity but there's a couple of nuances here. Let's exit out of this, and I'm going to show you one that works currently. So you'll see that the second one here, Elastic Stream, double click on this guy. Let's walk through this together. Name, super straightforward, pick a name. Post here is where you're going to see the big detail. So this long value, starting with 33 and ending with 39, dot, that is the base64 decoded host name. And we are running TLS on this, secured communications. Okay. There's no RHONDOS, there's no custom alias, and most importantly, that second value from that base64 decoding isn't there. It's only the first one. All right. When we get into the stream is the configuration where you set up how new indexes are handled. You'll see that zlogs.sap.abop looks familiar, but instead of a .star that Elastic is expecting, we are defining that the event type of the event is the declared variable. So as stream receives these events, that event type within the message payload is evaluated one by one. If that event type is already identified as having an index, then that event is appended to that index. But if it doesn't exist, either it's the first time the event has ever come across the wire, or if it's a new event type based on a patch or something that has been updated, then a new index will be created. And then finally, that is the API key. It's very similar to any other setup here. There's nothing custom, right? You just copy the API key, save it to your clipboard or save it to a text editor, paste it in there. You're good to go. Let's X out of this. So this kind of hung me up the first time, but after you create it, don't forget to create your point. Come in here and make sure you create the target and set it to active, just like you would on any other uploader. Head back to the main. Let's exit out of here. I guess the other thing to call out on this screen is that on the latest release that we're currently working with, this table still calls for a Splunk index. That should be empty, and that's totally normal. It doesn't have to be defined. Whereas like a Cribble uploader, you'll see some Splunk index there. That should be empty for the Elastic side. All right, we'll cancel out of this guy. Go through your stop-start of the check job collector and toggle the uploader. Can take some time depending on how many are unsent. Give it some time and you're off to the races. Exit out of here. We'll head back over to Elastic. See what this data looks like. So I'm going to go into Analytics. You'll see the K for Kibana. Go over to Discover. So when we select what we're looking at here, we have all of these different templates. This makes it super simple. So when it comes to search time, even though we've created all of these indexes, and there's 300 event types in PowerConnect, so we've created 300 plus indexes, including the dynamic event types, right? When it comes time to search, we still have a single view that we can see everything through. Zlog star. So we click on that view. Let's go 15, yeah, it's fine, 15 minutes ago. And all of the data that's coming into the Elastic stream that starts with zlogs. So hypothetically, this could be SAP ABAP, SAP Java, SAP Cloud, and all of the subsequent event types are included with that one view. And at this point, each field has already been extracted. And over here on the left, you can see all of this. Every single field name can be filtered at this point. And so you'll see everything is prepended with data. So in that JSON object, everything starts with data, and that's to follow the new data model here. Go into detail on that later. But essentially, let's go down to, what do we want to look for here? Event type. So data.eventType_s. You'll see S and N at the end of each field name. That declares if it is a string or a numerical value. And so data.event_type_s is a string value. And here we have the top 5. Stats, obviously, a very chatty event type. This we can see and declare that. Or we can add a filter or run our query language. So we're not going to cover any of the search stuff at this point. This is just a brief tutorial on how to get the data into Elastic. As we continue to evolve, we'll go into more search best practices, how to build Kibana dashboards, and how to manage the data model. If you have any questions, again, what we covered today is we went over, in closing, we covered the Elastic overview as a platform, what those architectural options are. We reviewed what the configuration should look like in Elastic, including an index template schema, the different options that you can apply, how to define or gather what your cloud ID is in that customer environment, to how to create an API key, how to use a free online decoder to decode your cloud ID into a host name, and which components to use. Then we talked about the requirements. You need PowerConnect version 8 to do this, which BC sets need to be activated, which toggles to be turned on. Again, the Elastic integration does not come out of the box with version 8. You have to activate the BC set after importing that special transport, and even then you have to turn on the toggle to make it available for configuration. And then we went through what a configuration would look like. And now we see this data in Elastic. The data model is stable, and we're using the power of Elasticsearch to create indexes all across all of our event types. And if you have any questions, feel free to hit me up on Slack or email me. Have a great day. Thank you so much.